We go through life making literally countless choices every single day. We're choosing what to eat, how to invest our hard-earned money, how to navigate our careers and relationships. And we desperately want to believe that if we just think hard enough, we can guarantee a great result. But as we're going to dive into today in this explainer covering the core concepts of thinking in bets, that guarantee is actually a pretty dangerous illusion. So let me ask you something. If your decision led to a bad outcome, does that mean you made a bad decision? Your gut reaction is probably, well, yeah, of course. But this provocative question exposes a really common trap where we unfairly punish ourselves for bad luck, or, on the flip side, we reward ourselves for dumb luck. Think about a time you drove home through a terrible, blinding storm. If you made it safely, does that mean driving in those conditions was a brilliant choice? Not necessarily. There's actually a name for this trap. It's called resulting. It's our absolute tendency to equate the quality of a decision purely with the quality of its outcome. And this is a huge problem because it completely prevents us from objectively separating our actual skill from pure random luck. If we only ever look at the finish line, we learn absolutely nothing about the race we just ran. We have to learn to separate the two. The issue here is that life just isn't a predictable game of chess. It's actually way more like a messy game of poker. It's filled with hidden information and unavoidable risk. In chess, all the pieces are right there. You can see everything. There's virtually no luck involved. If you lose, it's because you made inferior moves. But life is poker. You can play your hand perfectly. You can make the absolute best possible decision based on the information you have and still lose the hand just because of a bad draw of the cards. Let's move into Section 1, the mind's decision traps. Once you accept that life is poker, you start to realize your own brain is often the worst player at the table. We default to some really specific mental traps. First up is hindsight bias. This one tricks us into thinking we knew it all along right after an outcome happens. It makes the messy past look perfectly predictable, which it absolutely wasn't. Then we have the self-serving bias. This is essentially our ego's defense mechanism. If something great happens, well, that's our brilliant skill. But if something bad happens, oh, that was just terrible luck. Finally, there's binary bias, where we simplify complex, highly uncertain situations into being either 100% right or 100% wrong. There's zero room for nuance, which completely distorts our ability to learn from our choices. And it gets deeper. You probably think that when you hear new information, you evaluate it first and then decide if you believe it, right? Well, evolutionary psychology tells a different, kind of terrifying three-step story. First, you hear it. Second, you immediately believe it. And third, only sometimes, maybe if you have the time or energy, do you actually vet it. We walk around holding on to completely unvetted beliefs simply because our ancient, fast-acting reflexive systems are still running the show. So, how do we short-circuit these fast-acting, lazy biases? It starts with two incredibly simple words. Want to bet? Hearing this phrase triggers a very real, immediate neurological shift. If someone challenges your untested belief and says, "Want to bet?" you immediately step back. You start thinking, wait, am I sure? Exactly how sure am I? It forces your slow, deliberative mind to finally wake up, fact-check your own beliefs, and bring your actual level of risk out into the open. That brings us to Section 2, thinking in bets, the paradigm shift. To really fix our process, we have to completely shift our perspective away from our absolute obsession with outcomes. Recognizing that almost every single choice we make is essentially a wager against our future selves allows us to finally detach our ego from the final result. When you choose a new job, a life partner, or even just a diet, you aren't making a guaranteed 100% correct choice. You are placing a bet. You're betting that the future version of yourself who takes that specific path will be happier or more successful than the versions of yourself who take the other paths. Now, a huge part of this shift requires developing a new superpower, and it's simply being able to say, I don't know. Society completely conditions us to think that if we aren't absolutely certain about everything, we must be incompetent. But truly great decision makers know that representing their actual state of knowledge, which almost always includes some degree of uncertainty, is the true mark of a powerful, rational mind. Embracing I don't know leads us right into probabilistic thinking. Imagine you make a fantastic, well-reasoned decision that has an 80% chance of success. That still leaves a solid 20% slice open for bad luck or unexpected variables. If that 20% slice actually happens, it does not mean your decision was inherently wrong. It just means a long shot hit. By thinking in probabilities, you stop beating yourself up over adverse results when your underlying process was actually totally sound. The incredible thing is, when you embrace these shades of gray rather than falling back into binary right or wrong thinking, your decision quality drastically improves over the long run. Declaring your uncertainty tones down those aggressive absolute statements. It opens the door for others to collaborate and share valuable information with you. Honestly, it actually makes you more credible because people inherently trust someone who is honest about risk. And most importantly, it keeps your mind open to updating your beliefs when new facts emerge.
This mindset shift naturally turns you into what's called a calibrator. A calibrator is just someone who constantly refines their baseline bets based on new objective information. It's a lot like compounding interest. The earlier you begin to realistically evaluate your outcomes, asking why exactly did this happen, and separating the genuine skill from the random luck, the more accurate your view of the world becomes. And that leads to infinitely better bets in the future.
All right, let's look at section 3, time traveling your decisions.
Because our present selves are, quite frankly, incredibly bad at making sacrifices for our future selves, we need structures in place to help us make better bets over time. Enter the Ulysses contract. It's named after the Greek hero, and it's a literal, pre-planned interaction between your past, present, and future selves to stop irrational choices. Just like Ulysses had his crew literally tie him to the mast of his ship so he wouldn't steer into the rocks when he heard the siren's song, you can bind your future behavior so you don't succumb to temptation when your rational mind is weak.
We use these contracts to structurally design our environment and protect us from our own impulsive brains. You can use barrier-inducing contracts, like intentionally avoiding the mall's food court entirely so you literally cannot buy the junk food. And on the other hand, you have barrier-reducing contracts, like packing healthy snacks with you, so making the right choice is actually the easiest choice. You are basically rigging the game in your own favor. Beyond shaping our physical environment, we can use scenario planning to predict the future. First, there's backcasting, where we imagine we successfully achieved our goal and then we work backward to identify the specific steps and lucky breaks that got us there. But even more powerful is the pre-mortem, where we actively embrace negative visualization. We imagine the plan completely failed, it's a disaster, and we work backward to figure out exactly what killed it. Here's the catch, though. The likelihood of your negative and positive futures must add up to exactly 100%. If you only do backcasting, your plan is going to be dangerously over-optimistic. You'll just assume everything goes right. Pre-mortems are absolutely vital to deflate that overconfidence because they force you to sit down and assign actual probabilities to obstacles, hidden risks, and plain old bad luck.
By vividly and intentionally picturing our plans failing through a pre-mortem, we can actually build in the mechanisms to avoid those exact failures. We decrease the probability of the failure ever happening because we already anticipated the roadblocks. We are no longer shocked or scrambling when the cards don't fall perfectly our way.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to really challenge your illusion of certainty. Think about a recent setback in your own life. I mean, really look at it. How much of it was genuinely a flaw in your decision-making process, and how much was simply the random draw of the cards? By breaking the habit of resulting, taming those lazy mental biases, and fully embracing probabilistic thinking, you can step out of the illusion of the chessboard. It's time to start viewing your life for what it really is, a fascinating, completely unpredictable series of calculated bets.